Good evening. Welcome back to the channel. Finally, it's my pleasure. It's my cousin Paul. How you doing, my friend?
Good. How you doing? Long time no see.
I know it's probably been what? Jesus, I was about 10 years old last time I clapped eyes on you.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
which makes me how old? Yeah,
Oh, I've got no
we
idea how
we
old
won't
I
go
am.
there.
No.
No,
So,
Yeah,
no.
so we started a new series about poignant moments in life.
right.
If you've got quite a jacket with your career, with the military, with the police, Aegis, DynCorp, what would be your four poignant moments that you could pick out?
Four moments that I could pick out. Oh wow. Yeah, that's going back. Um,
Obviously, you've got NDAs all over the place, and you can't say too much, right?
some,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, um, honestly, coming to the States was a big deal. Moving to the States, you know what I mean, from the Isle of Man. And then you're getting I mean, obviously, I joined the military. I was in the military for a few years in the U.S. Army, so that was a big deal. It was, making
Yeah,
it to
for
the army
sure.
and stuff, and
Thank you for your service,
yeah,
by the
thank
way.
you,
Thank you.
thanks,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then I guess after the military, getting into law enforcement, graduating the academy and stuff, and that was a huge thing. I mean, because I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty certain that no one from Annika in the Isle of Man has ever done that. So,
I doubt it as well. I doubt it very much.
yeah. Um, yeah, since then it's been yeah, roller coaster, I was in law enforcement for about 10 years and then the sheriff I was working for at the time, he put in for his retirement. I saw the writing on the wall. I was like, this is going to go, this things aren't going to be the same. A buddy of mine was running a contract over in Afghanistan, and he kind of dangled the carrot and said, "Come on over, work for me." So, yeah,
Well,
so I signed up and jumped over there, and I wanted to be the original plan was to be over there for a couple of years, and then I could come back and just do 80 hours of in service, get my police certification back, and stay in law enforcement. But I stayed over there for about 6.5 years.
oh wow.
So yeah, and then eventually came back. Had no desire to get back into law enforcement, but here I am. So yeah,
Can you
but
elaborate? Can you elaborate on your time in Afghanistan?
What
yeah.
was that
So
like?
um, I started off um, working on the Department of Defense contracts. And
Oh,
I went over there. I was hired on as so. One thing you learn pretty quick when you get to Afghanistan is the job description you were hired for is not necessarily what you're going to work as.
hmm.
So I was brought on as a what they call the PST lead, the Protective Security Transportation lead. So I would have been leading a team of mainly third country nationals, mixture of Gurkhas, Nepalis,
Okay.
some Fijians, Eastern Europeans as well. Um, and I ended up in Herat, Afghanistan, which is about 90 kilometers from the Iranian border. It's a pretty kinetic environment. And, this is back in 2012.
Okay.
And yeah, I ended up working as the deputy site security manager, as well as performing my duty as technically the PST lead, as they called it. And then I eventually took over as the site security manager. So I was managing the static guard force, the third country nationals, and the mobile security teams and stuff. And yeah, that was under the DoD contract. Did that for about 4 years, and I skipped over to the Department of State, and because the contract I was on was winding down, and so I wanted job security. I didn't want to go home at that point. So I jumped over to the Department of State and ended up as a lead for their emergency response team at the U.S. Embassy in Kabul.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's really fascinating, interesting, even if it's not exactly what you signed up for. That must have been like an amazing experience.
It was. It was an adventure. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And honestly, for the most part, I loved it. Obviously, had a lot of it had its ups and downs. We did lose a lot of people over there. And but for the most part, it was felt like we were serving a purpose. Definitely. You know,
Yeah.
Did you feel more at home working for Department of Defense or skipping over to state?
Department of Defense. Yeah, state was a good opportunity. Better rotations. The money was good, but I never really enjoyed working for the Department of State. The Department of State's got a lot of issues. I mean, you just to witness the sheer amount of fraud, waste, and abuse through the Department of State, and just taxpayers' money like it was growing on trees, and just giving it away, burning it, basically, just unbelievable. And you just got to kind of put up and shut up, and just deal with it.
Wow.
It was, yeah, Department of State was a mess.
Are those the losses that were filtering through to the general public and people have been uncovering ever since?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was public information back in 2015, 2016, that they were over $12 billion over budget just on the construction of the United States Embassy in Kabul. It was the biggest embassy complex in the world. And the Department of State workers who were assigned there, they nicknamed it the Country Club.
Oh my.
Yeah, they could go there for a year. They never had to go outside the walls. They were never really in danger. And you get indirect fire, some rockets occasionally and that kind of stuff. But yeah, they were just going over there and they were just partying. I mean, there was bars, nightclub, pools,
Wow.
the gyms. I mean, the accommodations they were staying in were luxurious. The stuff that was going on there, and then later on, it became um, public information as well that um, there was some drug busts done by the DEA. DEA had an office over there, of course, and yes, allegedly there were about a dozen.
Heroin.
It was actually cocaine
Oh
coming in
wow,
on
that's
diplomatic flights and diplomatic pouches, and it was all uncovered. But nobody ever was prosecuted because they were Department of State workers, and at the time that happened, um, Hillary Clinton was in charge of the Department of State. Would have been a huge embarrassment. So, but that
huge
kind of stuff
embarrassment.
going on, we seen a lot of crazy stuff going on, and it was all at the expense of the taxpayer. And you just, yeah, yeah, it was an eye opener.
Can you elaborate any
Yeah.
further without saying too much? I'll
Say
get
again.
yourself in trouble. Can you elaborate any further?
I can only comment on what is public information now. You know what I mean? Yeah, I can't really elaborate. But all this stuff has been, talked about even on social media in the regular mainstream media and stuff. The stuff that apparently happened. But yeah.
Were you reminded repeatedly not to say anything? Did they need to keep, or was it just like, you knew not to say anything, not to report, not to.
We were told, over again, don't
Yeah.
mention this, don't be putting it on your Facebook pages and that kind of stuff. But they didn't realize, before I went overseas to Afghanistan, I worked for the DEA. I was the task force officer of the DEA out of Richmond, Virginia, and I actually bumped into two of the guys that I worked with over there in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I bumped into them in
Oh,
Herat,
really?
bumped into them again in Kabul, and they told me what was going on. And I was like, "Wow, that's insane." But I got to see it firsthand.
Prior to us like getting in touch again, that's the last I actually heard from Bob, from your brother,
Yeah,
when you was in Kabul. Can you walk us through anything that happened over there?
in Kabul, um, yeah, we So my job, we were on what's called a PSD team, protective security detail. So we were taking our VIPs all over the place in Kabul, and outside of Kabul as well sometimes. But it was usually, 2, 3 vehicle motorcade, generally two vehicle motorcade, up armored vehicles, Toyota Land Cruisers. And we would take the VIPs to meetings and stuff. Sometimes we pick up DOD officials at the airport and take them to like the embassy or something, or take them to our camp or wherever they needed to go. We had a few close calls, not as close as when I was working down in Herat. Herat was a different world. That was crazy down there. But yeah, we had a few close calls in Kabul. Our base, which was it was called Camp Pinnacle, a place called the company called it company called it Camp Pinnacle anyway, and it was run by like a hotel company that was actually named C3PO. So obviously someone was a Star Wars fan. It was weird. It was really weird. But Pinnacle was hit. That was our headquarters camp, our flagpole as we call it. That was hit on July 2nd. Yeah, July 2nd of 2013. We got like hit bad. We got smashed. Massive V-bid, tractor trailer size V-bid, followed by what we call squirters, guys, bad guys with machine guns and grenade launchers coming in through the wall. Once they popped a hole in the wall, we lost several people, several good people. Yeah, that was bad. And we basically abandoned that camp and went to another camp closer to Kabul International Airport. And the camp we ended up at was the Baron Hotel. The Baron Hotel was mentioned. You remember the pullout from Afghanistan. There was the suicide bomber that detonated himself and killed 12 American servicemen.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
that was right outside the gate of the Baron Hotel, and that's where I was at, and that's where my wife was at as well. We weren't there for that event, but yeah, there was several events. I mean, Herat was bad as well. We had an active shooter on that camp. We lost some good people there too. And it happens, and you're reminded all the time. It's like, hey, that's what you signed up for, right? It's
Well, still takes a special person with a special purpose, I believe. I don't think everybody could do at all what you do. I think it takes a tremendous, and it must take a toll on you to this day, I'm sure. It changes your being, I would imagine.
Yeah, it does. I'm lucky because my wife worked over there too. So she worked for the same company as me when I worked for DOD, but she worked on commercial executive protection contract. I worked on government side. So the saving grace with the both of us, we both experienced similar stuff. The saving grace is we both understand what it was like over there, and we can talk about it with each other. And I think one of the things that causes PTSD is these guys and girls, they're going over there, and when they come home, they don't have an outlet because the loved ones at home, they don't understand. They don't want to hear about it either. They don't want to hear the law and everything else. So they don't have that outlet. With me and my wife, talking about it, it's just like therapy. You know what I mean? When it pops up in your head, she understands. When it pops up in her head, I understand, and we just talk about it and stuff. I think that's the saving grace, is just being able to talk to someone that actually understands, So,
I would imagine, for sure.
Yeah.
When the pull out from Afghanistan happened, in Kabul in particular, was you actually on the ground then?
No, I was back in the States by then. I left middle of 2017. Both myself and my wife left Afghanistan. Yeah.
Did you need a moment to reflect and almost get your head around it? Like you said, you had no willingness to start with to go back into law enforcement. Was that part of the reason why, or you just needed a breather from it?
Needed a breather. That's what I was looking for, I think. Just didn't want to go back to having to carry a gun, and deal with the stuff in law enforcement, Like I said, I had no desire to get back into it, but a friend of mine was chief of police. He'd just taken a chief's position down at it was actually Richmond International Airport, and he twisted my arm to come work for him, and yeah, So ended up working there a couple of years, and then he was retiring. And the county I live in, the sheriff, who was back then, he was the chief deputy. He contacted me and said, "Hey, you're looking for a job? I'll hire you on in the county." So yeah, and that was that, and ended up working the county.
You went to Capitol Police. Why was that Capitol Police?
Capitol Police was my first law enforcement job when I got out of the
That
army.
was
Yeah,
okay.
that was back in. I got hired on there in 2001 because I got out of the army in May 2001, just before 9/11.
Just before, yeah.
And I was in
Yeah,
the
it's
police.
just
Yeah, I was in the police academy 9/11.
Did that give you any kind of? Was you looking at that kind of with 9/11 happening and thinking, I've made a mistake coming out, and you were looking to go back in, or was you like focused on something
I think
different at that point?
at that time I kind of expected that. Sorry, my dog's just come in the
That's
room to
okay.
interrupt me. But
okay.
yeah, I got two dogs, and they I don't know, they got separation anxiety or something. So yeah, um,
I understand.
Yeah, Amanda
yeah,
with dogs is the one, aren't you, Amanda?
Yeah, I get it,
Amanda,
believe me.
yeah, she gets
but
it.
yeah, I was focused on beginning my law enforcement career because that's what I wanted to do. But I also knew in the back of my head that I could get called up at any time, and I don't know why they didn't call me up. But a lot of the guys who got out ran about the same time as me. They called up. They weren't. I was infantry in the army, and they weren't really calling up infantry guys. They were calling up military police. They were calling up specialists. Guys with specialty MOSs. Specialty jobs in the military, not infantry guys. So
Don't sell
um,
yourself
Oh,
short.
right.
that's
So
what I
so
was
yeah,
gonna
they
say.
never called me back
Fucking
up.
hell, man.
So I was able to stay in the academy and yeah, go from there and begin my law enforcement career. So yeah, my first job was with Virginia Capitol Police, and it was kind of a stepping stone in the law enforcement. Get certified, get trained, get a couple of years experience, and then I moved on to another bigger department here in Central Virginia. Um, a lot more people, bigger department, bigger jurisdiction, a lot bigger jurisdiction, and more opportunities. Like I ended up working. I was on the SWAT team. I was narcotics. Went to DEA task force,
Wow.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Do you ever
So,
sleep? Like seriously?
Sometimes I feel like I don't, but
Wow.
yeah, catching that
Amazing.
here and there.
Yeah.
and to add to the resume, you actually, while you was in the police force, you wrote a book. Why
I
is
did.
it?
Yep. Um, yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Yeah, policing
You
the
knew that.
paranormal. Yeah. So
Tell us
while I
more.
worked, huh?
Tell us more.
So while I worked at the Virginia Capitol Police, of course, the Virginia Capitol is very historic. It was the first capital, basically, of the United States. So it goes back a few years. So yeah, second oldest governor's mansion in the nation is down there as well. And it goes back for Civil War era and stuff. I found when I got to Capitol Police that a lot of the guys, there was probably just under 100 police officers working there then. And a lot of the police officers, most of them, had some sort of paranormal experience in some of the historic buildings. Because one of the jobs of Virginia Capitol Police is they're law enforcement, but they're also kind of like security. So at night, the Capitol building's locked up and stuff like that, and then some of the other surrounding state office buildings, old historic buildings, and you got to go in there in the middle of the night, take a walk around and stuff. Because the thing is with the old buildings is they don't have the greatest fire detection systems and stuff like that. So for insurance reason, they'll tell basically cop go in there a couple of times a night, take a walk around and stuff. And you walk around the whole building. And there's some interesting places. And like I said, the majority of the cops down there were reporting having paranormal experiences in some of the historic locations, Capitol
Yeah.
building, the Supreme Court building, the governor's mansion, places like that. And I mean, I've always been open-minded to that type of stuff, especially coming from the Isle of Man. You know what the Isle of Man is like. It's all, folklore and fairy tales and,
Very
supernatural
much so.
stuff,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Witches
And
as well on the Isle of Man.
say again?
Witches and stuff on the Isle of Man. Am I
Yeah,
right?
witches. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to roll
Yeah.
them down the hill in barrels.
Oh,
spikes in them. Yeah, yeah. What was it like 1980s or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but yeah, so I kind of took it with a grain of salt, some of these stories. And when my lieutenant came up to me when I first got hired on there and I was going to my first night shift, and he told me, he said, "Hey, listen," he said, "you're going to be in some of these buildings at night. You're going to see stuff. You're going to experience stuff that's going to make your hair stand on end. Whatever you do, don't go start shooting holes in shadows and stuff like that. All right, it's going to hurt you. All right, just keep your wits about you." And I thought, hey, I'm the new guy, right? I'm the rookie. They're having me on. And honestly, I'd only worked there a couple of weeks, and I'm like, this is crazy. Some of the activity in some of these buildings, and you're in there on your own. You go into the building in the middle of the night, lock the door behind you. There's no one else in there.
Oh, wow.
You've got footsteps, doors opening and closing. I've heard
Oh, gosh.
voices, like many voices, like someone having a meeting. Several people in a meeting in a room, and that was
It's
pretty
creepy.
regular, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And
I'd find that more unnerving than, I don't know, getting myself in a load of trouble outside than I would in there. I'd be way more unnerved about that.
it's amazing what you get used to.
I
It
guess.
really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Wow.
I was just giving a talk on this at a paranormal convention. About a week ago? Yeah, last weekend. Um, and it was a local one, Hanover County up here, and people were asking, how do you do? You have a paranormal experience in this building in the middle of the night. How do you make yourself go back in there? And it's like, well, you say to yourself, it's not going to hurt me. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
makes you jump occasionally. You know what I mean? It's like, but you get used to it. I mean, it's to be sitting in a little office in the Capitol building. It used to be a little office by the west entrance, and it's just like a little booth, and you'd sit there and just take a break or whatever, and you'd be in there for an hour, and you hear footsteps coming down the central corridor, and you think it's one of your buddies has come from the other side of the Capitol, open the door, come in, they're walking down the central corridor, and you get up, the early hours of the morning, you stretch, you stick your head out the room and look down the corridor, and there's no one there, but the footsteps had just stopped right in front of the office. And you heard them clear as day, footsteps coming down there. And it's just like, oh, well, and go back to sitting down. Uh, Doors opening and closing, you hear voices, that kind of stuff. It's just, you just get used to it. Yeah.
Did you find yourself being drawn towards writing prior to these experiences? Is it something you wanted to do?
So I'm talking with the guys I worked with. Um, they had some really, really great, interesting stories. And, I'd read some of these books about, haunted places and stuff like that. And I just figured, the stories from the cops, I found a lot more interesting. Like somebody needs to sit down and write a book about this, get their stories and write a book. And no one ever did. So when I left Virginia Capitol Police and went to another department, I went back, contacted all the guys I used to work with, asked them, could I get their stories, use their name, everything else. And I'd meet them in coffee shops, the house, the bar, whatever, sit down with them, get their stories. And then, I wrote a transcript, wrote the book, basically submitted it to a publisher, and the publisher snatched it up. So, yeah, and it was released in 2014. Yeah.
Oh,
What would be the most unnerving story that you actually told by one of your colleagues?
So there was a young girl, and I was actually on duty. I heard this go over the radio. It was pretty crazy. So this young girl, she wasn't a cop. We had what was called support officers. We had a couple of support officers. They were basically security officers, and she was working in the Supreme Court building. And the Supreme Court building back in the 70s used to be the Federal Reserve, and it's got a lot of history. There was a guard that got into a dispute with his superiors and ended up in a gunfight in the basement, and he was shot to death. And yeah, and you can still see the bullet holes in the guard turrets and stuff like that. The little pock marks in the bulletproof glass and everything, because apparently they were spraying with Tommy guns back then. And
wow.
yeah, so there's a story of him haunting the place, and there's also a more interesting story of a guy that used to be the night watchman in the Federal Reserve. And he was really old, and he used to walk around the building in the middle of the night with a cigar hanging out of his mouth. And because you could smoke in the buildings back then, and that's what he'd do. He'd just do his rounds all night, and he was so old he'd like retired twice, and then his relief came in one morning and found him sitting in a chair dead, and he just passed away. And several months after he'd passed away, people were reporting seeing him in the building, walking around the building, still doing his rounds. So that could be something too. But anyway, this young girl, she was in the building, Supreme Court building, late at night. And I think she said it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And she was up on the 6th floor, and there's a kitchen area, and there's a vending machine. And she went to the vending machine to get herself a snack. And when she put the money in the vending machine and she's looking at the glass, she could see her own reflection. But then standing behind her was a guy wearing, I can still remember her description. He's wearing a brown suit. He was an older guy. He had a scruffy black beard, a black curly hair. And she said the most menacing thing about it was he was a few inches taller than her, and he was looking down, but he's looking at the tops of his eyes at her.
Yeah.
He's standing right behind her. She said he either
Creepy.
touched her on the neck or blew on her because she got a really cold chill on the side of her neck. And she screamed, dropped the rest of the money on the floor, and ran. And
I bet she
there's no camera in the kitchen area, but there's a camera that's seen her running out of the door to the elevator. She's hitting the button on the elevator in full panic. Of course, the elevator's never come quick enough. And then she hits the fire door, goes down the exit, down the stairs. And when she got outside, she was a mess. She was calling on the radio. She needed assistance. A couple of the guys went down there, searched the building. No one in there. Looked at the camera footage. Nothing. But
That's
it freaked her out.
creepy.
Yeah, and she said, I'm not going back. She's like, you can fire me if you want, but I'm not going back in that building on my own.
I don't blame her.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
wow.
must admit, I am a believer. I don't think
Yeah.
there's everybody, just a certain few people linger about for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've had experiences myself, and I'm a believer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you take a look in the book. My first experience was at a gym I used to work in Strand Street back when I was about 17 years old, and yeah.
Ah, there's one earlier than that, that you've forgotten about.
Hmm?
We were kids at Nana's.
Yeah,
Me, you, Jennifer, and our Jane went for a walk to the cemetery. Do you remember?
yeah,
We saw something in the cemetery. All of us ran home quick.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
That's what you get for
Well.
exploring cemeteries in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Paul. Thank you very
Yeah.
much indeed.
Yeah, you too.
Thank
It's been great.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So much fun.
So,
Thank you. Take care.
you too.
Take
Take
care.
care. See you now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.